We are now halfway through the 2020s, which means it is 2025, which means it's time for some predictions. How you doing, everybody? It is that time of year once again. The beginning of the year. Yes, it is the beginning of the year, and that means it is time for my annual predictions video. That's right, my predictions for the worldwide top 10 highest grossing movies of the year. I always look forward to making these videos. I really do enjoy making these predictions videos. I've been looking forward to this, and I'll be honest, this year's list gave me a hard time. This was one of the more difficult years that I've tried to predict. I don't know, it was just, so I came up with the 10 movies that I wanted to put on my list. That came pretty quickly, but it was the order, it was the ranking that really threw me off, because when I was doing my research on each individual film and trying to predict how much each film would make at the box office, there were quite a number of films that all kind of fell within the same range. So I had difficulty coming up with the actual order of the list, but I think I got it. I hope I got it. I'm making the video, so obviously I came up with a final order. So we'll see how I do. Once again, I'm going to make the same disclaimer I've made over the past couple years. I'm not going to include any Chinese films. Despite the fact that over the past 5 years, there's been at least one Chinese film in the top 10, but I just, again, same reason as previous years, I just don't know enough about the Chinese movie market. I don't know really anything about the Chinese movies coming out this year, so I really can't make any accurate predictions. So I'm going to exclude them from the list. So with that being said, let's take a look at this year's list by predictions for the top 10 highest grossing movies of 2025. Starting off my list with my number 10, I have Captain America: Brave New World, the first of several MCU movies to be released this year. The first main MCU movie in like 2 years. And I know last year we got Deadpool and Wolverine, but it was certainly related to the MCU. It was definitely tied into it, but I don't know, in my opinion, it wasn't part of that main MCU timeline. Like Captain America: Brave New World, the way I see it, this is the first main MCU timeline movie that we've gotten in 2 years. We're just a little over a month away from this movie. They're in the final marketing push, so there's a lot of hype and anticipation as of right now for this movie. I'm very curious to see how it does. I had a hard time kind of ranking this one. It's gonna do well. It's not going to be this huge smash hit like previous MCU movies have been. It's not going to reach that $1 billion mark or even close to it. But I can see it going over that $500 million mark. So I'm going to put it at my number 10. My number 9, I have the live-action version of How to Train Your Dragon. The How to Train Your Dragon franchise, of course, a long-running franchise, very good quality franchise, very consistent franchise, because the first 3 animated films, that original animated trilogy, had very similar box office returns. They all kind of range between $490 to $620 million. That's where I kind of see this movie settling into around that $600 range, maybe $550 to $600 range. I think a lot of fans of the original trilogy, considering that this movie, the glimpses, the trailers that we've gotten of this movie, it seems like it's going to be very faithful to the original movie. So I think most How to Train Your Dragon fans will check this out, whether they're a fan or just out of curiosity. So I kind of see it settling within the same range as the animated movies, did, somewhere around that $600 million range. So I'm going to put it at number 9. Number 8, I have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, the final film, supposedly the final film of the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible series. These films always do very, very well, very solid. People just like a good old-fashioned action-adventure movie. Tom Cruise, he's consistently been a very dependable box office draw. The past 2 movies have done very well, although there was a slight decrease between the last 2 movies. The last one did around $570 million. I can see this one making a little bit more than that. I think this one is going to be very successful, obviously. It's on my list at number 8. Number 7, I have Fantastic Four: First Steps. I'm very curious to see how this movie does. In fact, this is one of those movies that I was having a really hard time trying to figure out where exactly to place it in my top 10 list. I settled with number 7, but I think this movie is going to be very telling. It's going to give us a good indication as to where the MCU will be headed from a financial success standpoint. There's been a lot of anticipation for this movie. A lot of people have been wanting to see the Fantastic Four enter the MCU for a long, long time. I think if this movie does really well, that'll bode well for the franchise. However, if this movie doesn't do well, that's going to be very telling for the future of the MCU. The fact that the Fantastic Four has long been desired to join the MCU. Now that we're finally getting it, if this movie underperforms, but I don't think it will. I think this movie is going to do fairly well. Obviously, I can see this movie making maybe somewhere around the $650 to $700 million mark, maybe. Who knows? I mean, that's what I'm predicting. That's one of the reasons why I decided on putting it at number 7. But this movie is going to be one of the biggest hits of the summer. Number 6, Superman. The Superman reboot, the latest Superman, the James Gunn Superman, the true cinematic start of the upcoming brand new DC universe, the DCU. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of buzz surrounding this film right now. We just got our first look, the first teaser, like a month or two ago. Man of Steel, if you can believe, Man of Steel was 12 years ago already. But that made $670 million back in 2013. I'd be very surprised if this one doesn't reach those Man of Steel box office numbers. I think this movie is going to be well received. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of anticipation leading up to this movie. And just like Fantastic Four, this is going to be also one of the biggest movies of the summer. And I think the hype is going to get really, really big once we get into that final marketing push where the marketing really ramps up and we're getting full-length trailers and all that stuff. I think there's going to be a large amount of anticipation for this movie. As a result, I'm putting it at number 6. All right, we're in the top 5 now, and here's my pick for number 5. I've got Wicked Part 2. Wicked 2, actually, it's now officially titled Wicked for Good, the sequel or Part 2 to last year's surprise hit. For me personally, Wicked was the surprise hit of 2024. I was not expecting it to do that well. I certainly wasn't expecting it to make over $700 million. Well, it's closing in. I think where we stand right now, as of today, it's hovering around that $670 million mark. It's definitely going to eclipse $700 million when it's all said and done, and I can definitely see Part 2 making more than that. That's my prediction, that Part 2 is going to do better than Part 1, definitely going to easily exceed $700 million at the box office. Huge success, which is why I'm putting it at number 5. Coming in at number 4, I have the live-action Disney remake of Lilo and Stitch, a very popular franchise. Although, to be honest, the original 2002 animated movie, it did okay at the box office. Like, it wasn't this huge, overwhelming success. But the franchise has really grown over the past 2 decades. It spawned several direct-to-video sequels. I remember there was an animated series as well. It's developed quite the cult following. And I think this movie, this is the movie this year that's really going to perfectly hit that nostalgic chord. I think this one is really going to draw in a lot of people due to the nostalgia factor. A lot of people my age, a little bit younger than me, they grew up with this film. They grew up with this franchise, so they're going to want to see it. They're going to want to relive those memories. And now they're old enough. They have their own kids now, and they're going to want to bring their kids to see Lilo and Stitch. I think that this movie's going to make a lot of money. I really do. I know we haven't really gotten any trailers for this movie yet. We got a couple sneak peeks, but it looks like it's going to be fun. It's going to recapture the same tone and the same feel as the original 2002 movie, which I think that's what people are expecting anyway. So as a result, this one is going to be one of the biggest family-friendly movies of the year. At number 3, I have the next movie in the Jurassic Park / Jurassic World franchise, Jurassic World Rebirth. There's been a lot of hype regarding this movie. We're getting a lot of teases. We're getting a lot of behind-the-scenes pictures and still shots for the movie. There's a lot of buzz. We haven't even gotten a trailer for this movie yet, and there's already a lot of buzz. A very successful franchise. The Jurassic World franchise, the Jurassic World trilogy, it took in so much money, although there was a slight decrease. I know the first Jurassic World made about $1.6 billion. Fallen Kingdom made around 1.3, and then the last one, Dominion, was right around that $1 billion mark. So there was, slight diminishing returns. This movie, I'm not sure if this is going to make as much as Dominion. It's weird. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie made over $1 billion, but at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if it made just less of $1 billion. If that makes any sense. I'm still anticipating a hugely successful film, $900 million, $1 billion. I do see this movie continuing the success of the Jurassic World series, the Jurassic Park series, whatever you want to call it. This is going to make a lot of money. It's my number 3. Coming in at number 2, I have Zootopia 2, the sequel to Zootopia, obviously. But the original Zootopia came out in 2016. That made a shit ton of money. That was a $1 billion movie. I can see this movie doing just as well. Like, honestly, I think Zootopia 2, that's going to be this year's Moana 2 and Inside Out 2. Like, Zootopia 2, that is going to be the $1 billion smash animated movie of 2025. I would not be surprised if this one makes more than the original. I'm expecting somewhere in that $1 to $1.5 billion range. I honestly would not be surprised if it got close to that $1.5 billion range. This movie's gonna make a lot of money, which is why I'm putting it at number 2, not quite number 1. This movie's gonna make a lot of money, but not quite as much as the next one. All right, at number 1, my prediction for the highest grossing movie of the year, Avatar 3, now officially titled Avatar: Fire and Ash. The Avatar franchise, man, it stumps me. I was not expecting Way of Water to make as much as it did. That was 2022. I included it in my 2022 box office predictions, but it was a little bit lower on the list. But man, did that movie prove me wrong. That ended up being the highest grossing movie of 2022. It made like $2.3 billion. I am very curious to see if this one does that much. It'll be interesting. Like, is the Avatar franchise still is it still going to be as strong? Is there going to be a slight decline? I honestly, I can see this making about the same, like around that 2 billion mark. I don't know. I honestly can't say. I don't know if it's going to make as much as Way of Water, if it's going to quite reach that $2.3 billion. But yeah, I totally would not be surprised if this ended up being around that $2 billion range. And yeah, it's crazy how much money those Avatar movies make, and this one will be a real indication of just how strong this franchise can be, still is, whatever you want to call it, however you want to describe it. But yeah, this is my prediction for the number 1 highest grossing movie of the year, Avatar: Fire and Ash. And there you have it. Those are my predictions, this year's predictions for the top 10 highest grossing movies of 2025. Let's recap, shall we? Let's see. Number 10, I got Captain America: Brave New World. Number 9, How to Train Your Dragon, the live action How to Train Your Dragon. Number 8, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Number 7, Fantastic Four: First Steps. Number 6, Superman. Number 5, Wicked: For Good. Number 4, Lilo and Stitch. Number 3, Jurassic World Rebirth. Number 2, Zootopia 2. And number 1, Avatar: Fire and Ash. So that concludes this year's predictions video, and as we've done in the past, we will be revisiting this video sometime next year. We'll see just how accurate my list will be, my predictions will be. If you like these kind of videos, I will put the playlist. I got a playlist. I've been doing this since 2019, so the playlist for all those previous years will be down in the description box if you want to check out my predictions and also my revisitations, the videos where I revisit all my predictions to see how many I got right and how many I got wrong. My 2024 predictions are in that playlist as well, and that video we're going to be revisiting in just a couple months to see how accurate my predictions for 2024 were. So check them out. If you like this video specifically, if you were entertained by this video, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And Happy New Year, everybody.